Hello everyone and welcome back my lovely patrons, and we are here with another Go video, and today we're going to go over our Josekis for our opening this month. So let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so what's first important is the order of the opening. I think a couple of my students, I gave them an opening and they kind of played the order wrong. So I want you guys to realize that the order that you play your opening in is very important. It can get countered, it can get interrupted. The opening order is very, very important. So with black, for the Chinese opening, you start with a start point. You don't go here and then go here. That's not how it works. You never know, your opponent might go here, and then all of a sudden you're in a different opening. Yeah, it looks similar, but no, it's completely different opening. Completely different Joseki choices, direction, everything else. So it's very important that you play the order correctly. So it starts with a start point, then a 3-4 point with this one, so that way the Shamari and stuff faces that way. And then you play the Chinese opening, which is the widest side. This is a 5-space extension from this stone, because this stone is a little bit more important to be closer to than the start point, because the start point's a little bit more flexible. So you do want to be 5 spaces away from this one. Now, as white, go ahead and play your start point across from it. Don't play it here. The reason I say this is because some players like to interrupt and make the game complicated, interrupt your opening, make the game complicated, and all of a sudden you're in a cross Joseki, which is a big fight, completely different opening. Now, I'm not going to say that this is bad to play, because actually with Komi, the cross Fuseki is a slightly good for white, because on this board, the score kind of becomes close to even. The board score becomes close to even, so white's up by Komi just by a little bit. So a cross Fuseki, in my personal opinion, and I think in a couple pros' opinions, is slightly good for white. However, we're working on our opening and some basics, so we don't want to give our opponent the chance to play a complicated opening, so we're going to start by playing the cross. That way, no matter what they play, this corner or that corner, our next move will be another star point, and we will be good to go. If they do try to invade or something, just go ahead and play a Sente Joseki. That's perfectly fine. And then you should still get a star point, so let's say you do something like that. Still get a star point, doesn't matter, right? You can actually even Tanugi and still get another star point. If they try to do this, yeah, it's not our opening anymore, but you're up by a corner. So you're already at an advantage, so it's not even by Komi, it's by a little bit, maybe by Komi and a little bit more than Komi. Maybe by a little bit more. So I think this would already be good for you. So if you get someone complicated like that, there is no preparing for these complications. Just revert it to basics and go open sides, or open corners, open sides, biggest area, and you can just take the open corners. Other than that extreme case, though, you should be good to play your opening as white. Alright, so let's go over our first Josekis. The first one you need to know is this immediate approach. This is going to be a little bit good for black locally, because black already has this move, but the important Joseki to remember is to go with this knight's move, because you are trying to surround this position to get some influence. They will attach, of course, to try and make a base, and you're going to play this S2 move instead of the tiger's mouth. Normally you'd play a tiger's mouth. However, when you have a stone over here and you're trying to steal the base, you can play this move. This does leave a little bit of Aji right here, though, but it can't be activated immediately because of this cutting point, and this way you're okay. Just remember that there is a little bit of Aji. When this stuff does start working, though, let's say like in the second half of the mid-game, there is a response here that you can think about, so just keep in mind this one. But other than that, you should be okay. There shouldn't be too many complications, and if there are, then send me the game to review. If you have complications with the opening, send me a game. I can maybe answer some questions, or maybe your opponent did something to trick you, and we can talk about how to respond there. So yeah, and of course, if you have any questions, ask them in the comments below, and just let me know. However, S2 is an important move in this opening, because with this stone right here, you are going to steal the base, so that will be very important. And then white goes to make the base. Now, the next move is actually sort of just book knowledge. It's actually a jump, and this is to surround this position. And white jumps out to not get surrounded. And this is where you start getting to the possible complications, because maybe if your opponent doesn't know the Joseki, then this is where they would start messing it up and doing something crazy. And unfortunately, I can't show you every possible variation, so I can only show you the correct variation, and then we'll go from there, depending on how your opponents play we'll go over some more variations. All right, so you do want to push here because you want this peep. This peep creates this kind of elephant eye shape. Now, what is important for white is to play this move first because it's free. And this free move will get white a very nice base. After black plays this kind of diagonal move, the invasion becomes a little bit more difficult and white's life becomes a little bit more questionable. So we immediately play this move and connect. Oh, not there. And connect. Now, white is alive on the inside. If you want to do this life and death problem, I recommend setting it up on a board and maybe just reading it out, trying some moves, maybe with a friend or something. See if you can see how you can kill this white group. What are all the vital points? That could be a very good exercise for you. And if you do it yourself, you are more likely to remember the variations inside. So if you have time to do that, I recommend doing it. However, this white group is alive as it stands. So now black can either Tanuki or locally black can play here. And this is going to be an important shape to remember because with an elephant's eye, the response to your opponent cutting through the middle of the elephant's eye is a knight's move, either here or here. You want this one though because when they try to jump out, you actually have a nice tiger's mouth here. So you are actually surrounding the group very nicely. There is a little bit of Aji because if you try to do this, there is some cutting points in Ataris, but it's very, very manageable and very nice for influence. So if you do this immediately, it's perfectly fine. Just know, however, there is the option to Tanuki at this move if you feel inclined to do so. Personally, I would say go ahead and play it and just learn how to use the influence, because that kind of is the purpose of this opening, is to teach you how to use influence. So I think this would be nice to play if you get this far, and then you can learn how to Tanuki later, or what situations you can Tanuki for, and everything else. But it's nice, it's solid, it's should hopefully be very easy for you to use, and yeah, that's our first Joseki. Alright, so let's go over the next one. The next one is actually going to be for the white one, which is the 3-3 invasion. I'm sure most of you know at least some variation of the 3-3 Joseki, but it did change a lot after AlphaGo. So let's go over that for starters. So our first basic Joseki is going to be this one, and everyone and their mother knew this Joseki, but turns out AlphaGo said everyone on the planet was wrong, because this Hane is actually bad. The reason it's bad is because this Tiger's Mouth makes White's thickness very powerful, and AlphaGo and all the AIs have showed that thickness is very, very powerful. So we actually don't exchange as Hane anymore until we get surrounded on this side. So now we're actually alive as it stands, and we can Tanuki. So if you wanted to Tanuki, now would be the time. If you feel uncomfortable with it, you can push one more and then Tanuki, and you just have a little bit less Aji on the corner. And that way this round isn't Sente. But right now, you just know that you do not want to exchange the Tigers or the Hane here because you want Tanuki and you don't want to make your opponent's thickness that much stronger. So, who knew? I mean, this is kind of interesting that one little Hane that everyone on the planet knew and played as very basic knowledge, and then AlphaGo came and said, hey, this isn't right. So yeah, that's our first one, and if your opponent does get to play in here, just know that there is a little bit of Aji right here, because if we tried this, there can be a Ko, and then an Atari, and yeah, there's a Ko there. So just know that does exist. You can just simply play here. The Aji here is not alive, so just know that this is only an I, so you do have to come back and cut here, and that can be pretty complicated. Or you can just go right here and then get that. That way you're completely alive. So you are alive, and there is some Aji to keep in mind, but just the tricky part here, actually, the only tricky part here is the order of the moves. Other than that, you should be okay. So this one's fine. Then here, and sometimes what we'll try here and get complicated. If you don't want to fight the Ko, you can just live. And if they try to go all out, well, now you can just go out and you're alive. So it's perfectly fine. Just know that if they get this move, now it does become pretty complicated, because now you only have one eye, and it can get into a Ko situation, and it can get pretty complicated pretty quickly. The timing of that is important, and your opponent can cause you a lot of grief and a lot of trouble, and sometimes your opponent will start the Ko and lose the Ko just to get 2 moves in a row somewhere, or if there's another life and death situation and another Ko starts, they might threaten this corner. That is stuff that can happen. So just know that when white gets here, most of the time you want to go ahead and respond and just make it pretty solid, pretty alive. Simply because it reduces complications, which you do want to do until you get to higher levels. You want to reduce the amount of complications you have to deal with because you already have to work with enough problems with some negative value moves. So just know that this one is, I wouldn't say 100% Sente, but it has a definitely feels like it is locally some type of Sente value. It has some type of Sente percentage or weight. There we go. That weight, that's what I'm looking for. There is a significant Sente weight here. You can Tanuki, but I would recommend responding. It's just simpler. And if you really hate that, you can exchange one more. Just know that there is the option for your opponent to ignore this if there is something huge on the board. You can break out with a double Hane. However, it is possible for your opponent to Tanuki. It's not unheard of. So just know that this one is not completely Sente. It does kind of feel Sente for the top side, and it is pretty big for you to do, so most opponents would respond here. So if you do want to exchange that and it works at your level, go ahead. It's perfectly fine. If you feel comfortable with it, it's a perfectly good move. Just know that some players will Tanuki that, and locally it's good for you because you can break out, but globally, if there's something urgent, you might need to deal with that. So that is it for that, Joseki. Let's go on to another one. Another one is going to be this approach. The response to this approach is actually a simple jump, and then your opponent jumps back. And this is actually common with the star point as well. When you approach and you want influence, you actually jump back. I don't recommend this Joseki for white because personally, I don't like this Joseki. I think it's either going to be good for one player or good for the other player. In this case, I think it'll be good for black because white has a star point, which is for influence, yet you're going for a third line kind of secure territorial idea. So it is possible to play. However, with a kind of a go global thinking, go theory in mind, it doesn't really work with a star point like you would think it would. So usually I don't see this one played with a star point very often, and I think it's a little bit good for black. Black can easily push the position down. Black can build his own Moyo with this side Joseki right here. So it's very flat. It's very territorial. And it's locally good, but globally you're going for influence with star points, so usually you don't see this one. You see this one. So yeah, this is the side Joseki for this one. This is the simple one I recommend you play. If you are strong on the 5Q, though, you do need to learn this one as well. And this one can get pretty complicated and will require some additional research because this actually goes this way. And now you go here, and then white plays here. And then there is this Hane. This is why I said it gets pretty complicated, and white can play here. And white is alive in the corner because Q19 is Sente. As long as Q19 is Sente, black cannot kill this position. So let's just play some variations. So let's play here, and then here, and something like that, right? It looks like white's dead, but what if white plays here? Well, now if I try to go here, I just connect, right? So I have to cut you off if I'm trying to kill you, and then ta-da, there's another eye. So you can see this actually very, very simple for white to live as long as Q19 is Sente. However, the moment it's not Sente, you do need to try to live in here. I forget if it's just dead or if it's a ko. Honestly, I forget. I just know that Q19 is Sente, and that's all I bothered to remember. However, if you want to research this on your own, I do recommend it. There's a lot to learn here, but it can be very complicated. Just know that it exists. If your opponent does 3-3, this is the one you're supposed to choose, but I won't really be upset if you play this one. This one's the much simpler one, and you get Sente. So if this one's easier for you to play at your level, it's also perfectly fine. I don't think it will matter the difference between these two. I don't think it'll matter unless you're like 7 non plus. So if you want to play this one, it'll be perfectly fine at your level. It'll get you to 1 non. It's A-okay with me. Maybe some pros will argue differently, but I think this is easy to use and very simple. So if you don't want to play that complicated one, this one I think is perfectly fine. The difference is very, very small. So it should only matter to like the super strong people. So yeah, if you want the complications, go here. If you want simplicity, just go here. And that's the response to the 3-3 invasion. I'm trying to think. I do know that AI looks at this one, so if you're a big fan of AI, you can also look into this Joseki, or this peep right here. But otherwise, don't worry about it. I do also need to mention this one. This is a very popular Joseki for new meta AI stuff. However, I don't really think it's that big of a deal because you just connect, he connects, and it's very simple. Honestly, I think the 3-3 was probably a little bit better. If you want to play, if they played this one, just Hane and then connect. Don't worry about cutting. Oh, don't worry about cutting. Don't worry about wedging. I think just simplistic Joseki is usually more effective. So just connect, he fixes, and then you get Sente. And you got some points, he got some security, perfectly fine. So if they play this attachment, don't fret, don't stress. Just play this Hane. They can't cut. It's very silly for them to cut, so they do the wedge. Don't worry about complications. If you want to study those, go for it. But I would say just be simple is more effective, and then you can Tanuki and do whatever you want. So yeah, I think that'll be enough Josekis to get us started. I would like to see some games submitted to see if there's other Josekis that do come up that maybe I can help you guys out with. But yeah, this should be enough Josekis to get us started with these openings. So yeah, hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. As always, guys, thank you for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I look forward to seeing you guys next time.